Good morning, everyone. I'm Andrea Spencer with Elder Source. Welcome to the fourth session of Age Your Way, Growing LGBTQ Wealth. We're going to get started right at 11:30. So we'll just take a minute to wait for other attendees to join us. In the meantime, while you're waiting, if you wanted to check out our website at myeldersource.org, and you can see the previous workshops that we've had, numbers 1 through 3, that also provided a lot of information and resources through these workshops, and also through sageusa.org. So take a look while we're waiting, and we'll be starting in about a minute. Good morning. I'm Andrea Spencer, and I am Vice President of Communications at Elder Source, and I'm welcoming you to the fourth workshop in our series, Age Your Way, Growing LGBTQ Wealth. We are going to have a wonderful program this morning, and I'm so glad that you're able to join us. If you know of anybody who is not able to join us today, please note that this particular session is recorded and will be uploaded to the Elder Source website later today, so you can access it anytime if there's resources or information that you missed or want to take notes. We're going to get started. And Jessica, next slide, please. A few housekeeping items. It is being recorded, as I mentioned. It's going to be posted to our website along with this session and the first 3 of our workshop series. We're using the Zoom webinar format. Members of our audience are muted and their cameras aren't on, but we do encourage you to participate by putting your questions in the Q&A. The Q&A will happen toward the end of the presentation, so we'll get to you and your questions toward the end. We want to get through all the material first. All the resources that we're mentioning today are going to be shared in a follow-up email with attendees, and they'll also be found on myeldersource.org website. So due to the number of attendees, sometimes we run into technical difficulties, and I think everybody is kind of learned to be Zoom patient. So we'll do our best to fix any of the issues as quickly as we can. Next slide. I am one of the facilitators today, and I'd also like to present and introduce Elise Hernandez, they, them. She is Director of Research and Impact with SAGE. Good morning, Elise.
Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Happy to be here.
Good to see you too. Next slide, Jess. So the Age Your Way workshops, it's an Elder Source initiative that we wanted to provide important information from subject matter experts. So our LGBT community, older adults, have access to resources so they can age their way. This particular workshop series is funded by the LGBTQ Fund for Northeast Florida. So we're very grateful to them for this support. Next slide. So Elise, tell us about the workshops.
Yes, happy to. So we're here as part of a five-part series that's really designed to offer some valuable information and resources to prepare for the best way to age well. And the series is going to be covering a wide range of topics like legal decisions and preparation, being a caregiver and how you want to be cared for, financial preparation, and overall health and well-being. And really the goal is for you to use the information from all of these subject matter experts and SAGE and Elder Source websites to line up what you need and to help make the best decisions possible. SAGE, we are a national direct service training and advocacy organization supporting LGBTQ plus older people and their caregivers. And we really are working towards building welcoming communities to keep our issues in the national conversation, to really help ensure a fulfilling future for all LGBTQ plus people. And I'm going to be sharing a little bit more about what we have to offer later in the workshop. Next slide, I think.
Yep, thanks, Elise. Well, we have brought to the table today some wonderful subject matter experts. Next slide, Jessica. I'd like to introduce Stephanie Starling and Jennifer Pastorzik. Let me tell you a little bit about them, because we picked VyStar Credit Union as one of our subject matter experts because they are a pillar in our community for a lot of reasons. One, of course, because they're experts in what they do. So let me tell you a little bit about Stephanie. So Stephanie began her career in financial services industry with Fidelity Investments. She made the move to VyStar in order to be able to provide professional guidance and financial services to the people that live and work in her community. She enjoys helping credit union members pursue their financial goals during any stage of their life by understanding their individual needs using a holistic planning approach. Hi, Stephanie. And good morning, Jennifer. Jennifer brings over a decade of industry experience to VyStar's Investment Services team. She began her career with Fidelity, where she started as a broker dealing in retail securities, gradually adding new investment products and strategies to her repertoire. She has a passion for helping credit union members strive to preserve, grow, and manage their wealth through consultative planning conversations. And her goal is to listen, educate, and understand where each credit union member is in his or her financial journey, formulating the best plan to move their steps forward. She received her MBA from Jacksonville University. She holds a Series 7, Series 63, and Series 66 registrations with LPL Financial. She's a wife and a mother foremost, and she enjoys outdoors, auto racing, and University of Alabama football. So thanks so much, both of you, for joining us today. We're going to jump right in to your presentation, and I'm really looking forward to this information that you're going to be sharing. So I'll be back with you later and to talk a little bit about ElderSource. And Jennifer, Steph, take it away.
Thank you. Thank you all for joining us. This is all about helping grow and manage, protect, preserve your wealth. We can go to the next slide. And the next slide is going to show some pretty cool numbers. The U.S. holds over 30% of LGBTQ wealth, which is pretty cool compared to other countries. And that number is, of course, growing. If we'll go to the next slide. So LGBTQ community makes up 4.5% of the U.S. population. The coolest number I saw in here was in orange. So 8.2% of millennials identify as LGBTQ versus our previous generations, the Gen X and baby boomers. Why is this important? If you go to the purple spot, LGBTQ considers themselves spenders. So as these millennials spend more, they're going to inherit more. This is going to make up a larger part of the community and a larger part of wealth. So we need to make sure that everyone is armed with the right tools and resources to be successful because these numbers are, of course, going to grow every year. Next slide. So we're here to help you prepare for retirement and really any other goals that you might have in mind. And when we think of retirement, you know, a lot of people don't know where to start. They don't even know what it might look like. So a big part of what we do is take people a step back and say, what are your goals? What does retirement look like? Do you plan on spending time with family? Do you want to volunteer? Do you want to travel? What is all that going to cost? What does it look like for you? And how can we make your dreams come true? So a lot of people do a great job or an okay job saving to get to retirement, then they don't really know what's next. So that's where we come into play to help you come down that mountain as well. And again, going back to goals. So we need specific goals. I want to know what this retirement looks like for you. We want to be able to measure those goals. How long is this money going to last? How much money do we have? What are we working with? Can we achieve those goals with what you have? Do we need to bring in maybe new investments, different types of investments than just your traditional mutual funds that you might have? We want to make sure that those goals are relevant. Do they make sense? You know, can we actually make this happen? And we got to go over different time frames, whether it's retiring this year or in 5 years, what makes the most sense for you. Next slide. So we go over your needs versus wants. Short-term needs, maybe you need help managing some debt. You know, maybe it's a house refinance, rates are changing, maybe you're just swamped with credit card debt and you need some help getting a plan. A lot of people just don't know where to start, but know they need help. Or maybe you want to go on a special trip, buy a boat. Some medium-term plans might be refinancing a mortgage or potentially a HELOC or a line of credit to prepare for retirement, or investing in college plans for family members or children. It's a great way to pass on wealth. And then long-term, of course, is retirement. How are you going to retire? What is your long-term care plan? How do you see that all coming together? And do we want to travel, have a second home? What that might look like for you. A lot of these things, people just don't know, how to start or how to put them on paper. And we're here to help you do that. Next slide. And I think I hand it off to Jennifer.
Yes, thank you, Steph. I think it's really important that we have to remember that when it comes to the investments that we have and the plans that we have in place, it's really important to look beyond the headlines. Next slide, please. You're always going to hear something that in the media or on TV, they're looking to sensationalize an event to get a soundbite. So it's really important that we hear what's on the news and then we validate what we're hearing and that we have a good understanding of what's happening in the economy or what's happening in the environment is really impacting our personal financial situation. Next slide, please. I think we really need to remember that anything in life is usually about a balance. So when you hear the stock market is rising or plummeting, it's more along the lines of the market doesn't, soar and plunge. It goes up and down. And it's all about what kind of risk are you taking on and how is what's happening in the economy really impacting your personal financial plan. So again, we don't want to react to what's happening in the headlines. We know as individuals, fear and greed really drive our behavior, but it's really important to have a disciplined approach when it comes to long-term investing. Next slide, please. And what I mean by that, if we look at like your net worth and how you can position your money or your finances, look at it like a pie. So this is my financial pie. Then we want slivers or pieces of that pie that's going to help us accomplish different financial goals throughout our journey. So we can have anything when it comes to investments from something that's 100% conservative, where we have no kind of downside risk in the market, to something 100% super aggressive, fully invested in the stock market, and anywhere in between. But I think it's important as individuals that we realize every investment has some type of risk. Even if we're sitting on the sidelines in cash where we feel safe, if we think about inflation and purchasing power and our dollar and what it can buy, think about the price of gas, the cost of milk, what it is today, what it was 10 years ago, and how we feel it's going to be in the future with inflation. Next slide, please. And then when it comes to our investments, we hear stay the course or a disciplined strategy. What that really means for us is when it comes to our finances, we should have strategies in place, our buckets of money that are aligned with the goals we're looking to accomplish throughout our financial journey. And then within those buckets of money, we can really take a strategy and maximize how each piece of those investments work towards that goal. If this slide, what we're looking at here, there's different types of investments or asset classes, whether it's stocks, bonds, or cash. And throughout the year, they're going to go up and down. along the way. That's common. The market going up and down shouldn't really make you as nervous as it would for someone that doesn't have a financial plan in place. Next slide, please. And we hear about investors that feel, or people that feel, oh, I'm not comfortable investing in the stock market. I know members in my family or in my community that have lost money along the way. Again, I think it really comes back to having an understanding of the plan that we have in place, and understanding even when we're sitting in cash, like checking, savings, money market, CD accounts, we are really losing that purchasing power. So what the dollar can buy in the future. Looking at this slide quickly, you see how $100,000 quickly becomes a little over $68,000 over a course of a period. Next slide, please. And then we hear, what's the right time to invest? Oftentimes, investing is really counterintuitive to how we behave in other areas of our life. We all like to buy things at a discount, whether it's gas, milk, groceries. But when it comes to the market, counterintuitive. No one wants to buy or invest in the market when it's down, but that's a prime opportunity to position your money to work hard for you in the future because you're buying at a discount. And again, it's all about balance and understanding the risk that you're taking on within how your money is working for you. Next slide, please. And I think it's really important. It's never about timing the market to be successful. It's going to be about your time in the market. Looking at this slide, people that react emotionally and jump into the market or invest when things are going well, it appears, because prices are at all-time highs, or when the market has a pullback and drops, we jump out and lock in those lows. Looking at this slide, if you missed 25 of the best days in the market, look at how your $100,000 would have dropped to $92,000 over time, versus if you stayed invested over a period, it could be worth $424,000. And again, it's all about understanding the risk that we're taking on. Is this money working towards a short-term goal? If it is, then we're not going to have market exposure. If it's something that we're planning for 10, 15, 40 years down the road, we can afford to take on a little more exposure to the market and a balanced approach that's aligned with when we plan on using these funds. Next slide, please. Here, what we're looking at, oftentimes we hear people say, stay the course. What that should mean, if you have a diversified approach or strategy to how your money is working for you, and what I mean by that, different types of investments, stocks, bonds, and cash, if you're taking on the right amount of exposure to those different asset classes, that's called a diversified strategy. And that we can see wins out over time. Instead of being 100% too aggressive in the moment and locking in losses, you can kind of spread out that risk through diversification. Next slide, please. Now I'd like to transition this or hand this back to Steph for a little bit about building your foundation for wealth and well-being.
All right, thank you. We'll go to the next slide. So when you meet with someone like ourselves, a financial advisor, financial planner, it's important to go through these steps. We need you to get organized. And sometimes that's okay if you're not. So maybe you've had multiple jobs, you've moved. I just helped a woman last night, a teacher, met her in Gainesville, Florida, and she has a retirement plan in Michigan that she forgot about. She just happened to see an old tax form and she said, I think I had money going somewhere. We got to find it, you know? So that's okay if you're not organized, we will get you there. But that part of that is just knowing where your money is and what it's doing. And then we'll work with you to get those goals on paper. We'll talk about your numbers, how much you have, how much you need, what your income is, what your bills are, and if we can make that work at a certain time for you. I like to flip 5 and 4. So I'd like to plan first, get the plan in place, know where we want to go, and then we talk about the investments that will help us get there. But they kind of go hand in hand or at the same time. So we'll go to the next slide. So back to getting organized. We need to collect all your investment statements. So where you think all of your money is. A lot of times 401ks can trade hands. So maybe your employer was using Fidelity and now they're using Empower, or Charles Schwab. You know, these things could move without you knowing. So try and stay on top of where your money is and how it's invested. Tax returns are great. We might be able to find some loopholes to talk with your CPA about. Various insurance policies. So maybe if you have a policy outside of work, maybe it might be a good time to review it. Something that you should look at maybe every 3 to 5 years, just like car insurance. You want to make sure you always have the best one. Retirement accounts. There's different types of retirement accounts for different people. Whether you're, you know, a regular person that has a job, you might just need a Roth or traditional IRA on the side, or maybe you're self-employed. There's different types of retirement plans that open up there. Estate and trust documents, these are huge. We find a lot of people have a huge loophole in their financial plan just by not having beneficiaries, first of all, on your account, or maybe not having the right documents in place. And I always joke with people and say, if you don't create a will, the state of Florida will do it for you. So if you don't tell your money where to go, it's going to go to probate and the courts will decide. And if you don't have children or maybe a next of kin in mind that you would want, you need to get that on paper. So that's very important. And a trust is the ultimate way to control your wealth from the grave. So you can make a lot of decisions if something were to happen to you, how your money gets distributed and used, maybe even over a period of time. So great things to go into. And we love to partner with either your CPA on your taxes or with your lawyer to talk about different strategies. Next slide. Again, let's write down your goals. How much do we need? How much do we have? Are these needs or wants? A lot of people I've found, maybe they wanted to spend $10,000 a month in retirement, right? And then COVID hit. Nobody traveled. Nobody went anywhere. So the needs and wants could change over time too. So a lot of times we will create that plan and then we check in every year and make sure it's that we're still on track. Do our goals still make sense? Are they still the same? And do we need to make any tweaks along the way? Next slide. Net worth, we're going to go over, of course, your assets, where your money is, how it's invested, where your debts are. Do we need to do any refinancing? Rates these days are up, but back when rates were lower, it was a good idea for people to refinance and potentially save a lot of money on interest. So definitely something we look at with you. And what are your income and bills, both now and in retirement? So we want to know what pensions could you have coming in, state retirement, federal benefits, military. How does that work with your spouse? Will they be able to continue income if something were to happen to you? We go over all these different scenarios and different expenses, of course. Next slide. As far as investments go, like Jennifer was saying, you got to know where your money is and where it's invested. Know your options. They are limited inside some workplace plans. That's where other accounts come into play. And ask for help. It's okay to not know what you're doing in terms of retirement or investments. We get 99% of our clients that come in our office, I feel like they're embarrassed to say that they don't know what they're doing. And I tell everyone, that's okay. That's why we're here. I don't know how to fix my toilet. I don't know how to build a house or fix my car, which is why I go to a specialist for those things. So unless you're a expert in this field, which 99% of people are not, it's okay to ask for help. It's normal. This is a safe space. So we're definitely here. And like Jennifer said, stay invested. Lots been going on in the market this year. Working with financial advisors, they say people that work with us tend to have about 15% more in retirement assets or assets overall, because you've got someone on your team to talk to that's not your significant other, right? So Sometimes you just need to bounce those ideas off someone else to stay the course. So next slide. And of course, getting a plan in place. This year is a great example of the economy not going by plan, right? We weren't expecting inflation to happen, COVID, the new COVID strand, Russia, a lot of things internationally can go wrong. We also got to think about your own life and what can happen that might throw a wrench in our plan, like caregiving. You might need to retire early, take care of your parents or your children, and maybe even yourself or your spouse. So do you have long-term care plans? What if you break a hip and have to go out of work? Who's going to take care of you? And how much is that going to cost? And how can we help you plan for it? Different types of healthcare plans, like Medicare, or if you retire early, maybe you need to go shop the marketplace, which I do believe that our partners here have resources for that, and we'll talk about that later. There's different Social Security claiming options, which it's pretty cool that now, no matter what who you're married to, whether it's a man and woman or woman and woman, it doesn't matter. Everyone is seen as having the same benefits under Social Security and Medicare. So that is huge. And I think that came about in about 2015. Life after divorce, these are huge life plans that bring a lot of people to us. They don't know where to start. So that's a great time to get things together. And a lot of times it takes that type of life event for people to say, I need to really get myself together after they see that their parents or a loved one did not have a plan in place. And of course, estate planning, like we talked about with a will or power of attorney or trust documents. So next slide. Jennifer, I think this is off to you.
Yes, and I think as the population, we're all living longer and getting older, and I think we're finding ourselves more often in a place where not only are we raising our children, but we're also finding that we need to be caregivers for our parents. And I think one thing that we don't realize throughout our lifetime, unless you've been through it, is the cost of care in retirement is so expensive. If we're looking at a private room in a nursing home, it could cost over $100,000 a year just for that care. Next slide, please. And when we're thinking about planning for our health care down the road, on average, women live longer than men. And on average, women will need long-term care for 2.5 years out of their lifetime at over $11,000 a year. And that's at today's prices, which means it's only going to be more expensive in the future. Next slide, please. I think another financial planning situation that we find as we get older, we're really disciplined in our careers. We're experts in what we do. We do a phenomenal job saving because that's how we're designed. But as we get older, we have these other life events that come into place. It's our first time experiencing it, and we haven't done it before. One of those events would be understanding our Social Security options. There's different ages that you can claim. 62 is the earliest, and then there's different types of benefits, whether it's individual, spousal, or survivor. Oftentimes people think, oh, I can't wait to get 62 and retire and take Social Security. When they've done that, oftentimes it's not until after the fact that they realize they've taken a 30% pay cut for the rest of their life because of how Social Security, if you delay taking it past 62, it rolls up 8% per year. And then oftentimes we can't wait till we're 62 because we feel, oh, we can take Social Security and retire, but we don't always foresee how are we going to cover our health care. Medicare isn't available to us until we're 65. So there's lots of complexities that come into play as we age. Next slide, please. A couple of benefit options, as I mentioned, would be whether it's spousal or ex-spousal benefits. People aren't always aware that if a spouse passes, next slide, please, that if a spouse passes, oftentimes one person's Social Security may be higher than another. Oftentimes couples don't realize you can take the higher of the two, depending on your situation. Here's an example of someone who, Jordan, if he takes Social Security at age 63 and a half, he's entitled to $1,833 a year. Alex, his partner, even though his retirement or Social Security would have been $600 a month, he can qualify for Jordan's because Jordan is the higher of the two. And that's something we wouldn't expect anyone to know how to handle or navigate. That's when it's really important that you work with a professional like a certified financial planner to walk you through what those options are before you make an election. Next slide, please. And Steph mentioned it earlier, but a couple of events that really bring people into speaking with certified financial planners like ourselves is really when they're going through losing a spouse or through a divorce. Both of those events are traumatic, and you're losing a piece of what you're familiar with in some shape or fashion. Oftentimes we find with couples, there's one person that really manages or handles the finances and makes the financial decisions. And oftentimes there's one person that's more of the caretaker in the household. That's why it's so important that when you're in a situation that you have a financial plan in place where you really understand kind of what your net worth is, your assets, your liabilities, what your cash flow looks like, income and expenses, and that you have a plan of how your investments or your finances are growing for you. So if anything happens, you can really, one, protect what's yours, and two, ensure that when you pass through estate planning or through having the right type of documents in place, your wishes are executed on after the grave, as Steph put it earlier. Next slide, please. I think oftentimes when we don't think about protecting our wealth, we're really driven and disciplined in accumulating it, but we don't think about if something happens to me, how am I going to protect what I have? There's lots of legal documents that can help you do that, whether it's a will, a power of attorney. If you're no longer able to tell someone how you want your health care handled, you need to have the right documents in place that your wishes are executed on when you can't make those decisions for yourself. If we have children, do we want the state and probate court and a judge to determine who's going to care for our children? Or do we want to have guardianship in place that we know our children are well taken care of by who we're choosing to have their health and future in the hands of? Next slide, please. Again, I really think it comes down to a team of experts. This process all starts with the individual. You know, I would encourage you to remember when you meet with a certified financial planner, don't be worried about how to handle the conversation. Don't be worried about, are you asking the right questions? Our job as professionals is to guide you through just a consultative conversation so we understand the goals for yourself and your family. We understand how you've saved your money, how you've invested in the past, what those experiences have been, and most importantly, how you want to grow those assets going forward. So it's our job to guide you through the conversation to make sure we're hitting on anything that may be impactful, but our conversation is going to be geared around your preferences, your priorities. You know, that's the foundation of what we do. And then we can bring in the different teammates, if that's what we want to call them, along the way, whether it's a therapist, an appraiser, an attorney, a CPA. Again, your puzzle is unique to your life picture. Let's kind of put in those pieces along the way. Next slide, please. And again, just talk to your financial professional. You can reach out to a certified financial planner through the CFP board, through your local financial institution, in this case, VyStar. We have those on staff. It's just a conversation. It's complimentary. It's just some of your time to make sure you've thought through what are the right components of a financial plan, of legal documents that I should have in place that are important to my situation. Next slide, please. Steph, I'll pass it back to you. Or would that be Andrea? For any questions that we may have.
That was great, everybody. Thank you. Were you going to run through a scenario of any financial choices or decisions as it relates to the information you shared? We do have some questions that I want to pose, but I didn't know if there was anything else, Stephanie or Jen, that you wanted to put in there regarding, or we can address those two at the very end.
Stephanie does have a financial plan she's going to run through, but do you
Okay.
guys want to do questions first or the financial plan
I think we're
first?
going to do the questions at the very end, because I think we've
Perfect.
got both Elise and I have information, and we just thought we would group those all together.
We'll pass this to Steph then.
Thanks.
All right, so if we'll go to the next slide, or the next one. All right, so we put together a sample financial plan. This is something that if you were to meet with someone like ourselves, a certified financial planner, we're going to go through start to finish your financial situation. A lot of times people may come to us with just saying, hey, what do I do with this old 401k? And they're going to leave with this type of information. So they may come and ask them for one thing, and you're going to leave with a wealth of knowledge or a to-do list when you leave our office. Let's go to the next page and the next one. So we talk about your snapshot. What's your probability of success? So this is using the Monte Carlo simulation to just kind of dictate or see where you're at today and how successful could your retirement plan be, given a few different scenarios. And if we make any tweaks, how we could get that number a little bit higher. Again, we're going to talk about your balance sheet, your portfolio. Next slide. A lot of times I'll give people some homework. Here you can see this couple needed to update their 401k contributions based on our conversation, update will or power of attorney documents, and from homework for myself was to search some long-term care policies for them. Next slide. Again, the balance sheet, where are your assets, whether it's in the bank, investments, real estate, do we have a mortgage or loans involved, and your overall net worth. Next slide. People like to see it broken down. So we really list out who has what and how it all totals together. A lot of times, again, people don't know where all their funds are. That's okay. We will find them and help you get organized. Next slide. Then we talk about our different information that we put in. How much are you making today? What do you think you're going to make with Social Security? Hopefully, if you're in your 50s or so, you've gone on to the Social Security website, entered your information. You should start to get some information in there to see what your income may be, either at 62, 65, 70 years old. If you have those numbers, we'll plug them in and see whether you can retire early or not. Are we going to start pulling from your IRAs or other retirement plans to fill any gaps? How much are we saving today? Do we need to increase that or not? And what are your expenses, both today and in retirement? Next slide. And any goals that you may have. A lot of times people may find that they spend less in retirement than when they're working, depending on what your goals are. But a lot of things they don't think about is healthcare. So next slide. Back to Social Security. So we'll run different strategies for you, whether it's you claiming yours at 62 and your spouse claims at 65 and vice versa. What is the break point of filing early versus delaying? In this situation, they recommended not filing until age 70 and ending up with about $374,000 more in income. One thing to keep in mind is, of course, longevity for yourself, your family. What does your health care look like? That may come into play with claiming early or not. So next slide. Again, you can see the different cash flows, whether it's the optimal strategy of not claiming until 70 or pulling early at 62 or at full retirement age, and the different payouts. So next slide. People really enjoy this section. So this shows your cash flows. On the left-hand side, it shows the year and your age of yourself and your spouse, income that will be coming in, distributions from different retirement plans. Maybe you have some other income, rental properties, things like that. We put in your expenses and if we're over or under budget. So people really enjoy seeing that. This will give you that confidence to say, yes, I can retire next year. You know, they might know, I think I have all this money. I think I can retire, but I don't know what it's going to look like. I know my mom, for example, is retiring next year so that she can help me take care of my kids. And she would not pull the plug until I showed her this and said, Mom, you can do it. Look, this is where your money is going to come from. This is how we're going to fund these goals. It's okay. So people need this extra little bit of confidence to know when to retire or when to keep working. So next slide. Again, we break down where's that income coming from, whether it's salaries, Social Securities. Next slide. Net worth. So what will your non-qualified or maybe cash assets look like versus your retirement assets? When will your debts be paid off? Your overall net worth. Next slide. And that was a pretty quick run through. Those reports are usually very in depth. Those were just the main pages that I think really help people get the confidence that they need in their plan. And a lot of times with the crazy market these days, going back to that plan really helps to make sure that we are on track. This will still work even with today's numbers with the market being down. So it's a really nice thing for people to have and to take home to help know that you're on the right track, regardless of what's going on in the world.
And one thing I would like to add, I think planning is really a meeting of the hearts, and then it's a meeting of the minds. So I do believe that you're going to work and partner with someone that you like and trust. So take the time, interview a couple of, certified financial planners, find the one that you feel that you have that connection and that trust with, because to me, someone that you partner with as a financial planner, they're like, if you're on an airplane, they're the person in the cockpit that's going to get you to your destination. When you fly commercial, you want to get to your destination, you want to get there safely, and you want to get there on time. There are going to be moments when the airline pilot is going to say, buckle in, we're in for turbulent times. And there's going to be times when that pilot can say, take your seatbelt off and walk around. So you can look at a certified financial planner or the person that you work with for your planning, almost like an airline pilot. And then I would encourage you to think about the markets and investing like an elevator. An elevator goes up and down. It doesn't soar and plunge. So again, going back to let's be grounded, let's follow a plan, let's take the headlines out of what we're hearing and be disciplined so our money can be efficient and really work for us. Now I'll hand it back to Andrea.
That was terrific. Thank you so much. We're going to share some additional information, which I hope will help you, again, make those guided decisions. So Elise, do you want to share some information about the resources that are available through Sage?
Absolutely. Again, thank you all for sharing all of this information. I think I've learned some things as a younger LGBTQ plus aging person. So it's really helpful. I wanted to share some of the resources that Sage offers, not just around financial planning, but just in terms of support in general. And first say that all of our resources are free and accessible to anyone, really, but they're specifically tailored for LGBTQ plus aging experiences. So if we could go to the next slide really quickly. First, we have our National Resource Center for LGBTQ plus aging, which is the only one in the country that exists right now. And that's our information powerhouse and warehouse. This is where we have publications, fact sheets, guides, toolkits, and just general assistance on like 1,000 topics that are relevant to LGBTQ plus aging. So if you have a question or need a resource, this is probably the first stop for that. We also have the SAGE hotline, which is really for those who are experiencing stress or crisis or just needing help in general. We connect LGBTQ plus older people who want to talk with a friendly responder and who are ready to listen. And the hotline again is free, open 24/7, available in English and Spanish, and actually has translation in over 180 languages. We also have Sage Connect, which is a phone companion program that matches LGBTQ plus elders with volunteers for weekly phone calls. So whether folks are feeling a little bit isolated, living in an area without, a substantial LGBTQ plus community, or really just looking for a new friend, Sage Connect is really a safe and easy way to stay connected with folks. And then finally, specific to financial planning, Sage has Sage Sense, which is a digital wellness platform that's made specifically for LGBTQ plus older people to help increase financial stability and reduce economic stress. So signing up gives people access to tools, information, and resources that are really curated for the LGBTQ plus experience, helping folks make really important financial decisions that are right for their life. So this includes information that's been already pointed out today. So what benefits are available through Medicare, how to create a health proxy and a living will, and tips for increasing credit scores. And what we found so far is that it's making a difference. So more than half of folks who signed up for Sage Sense and were surveyed said that they increased their savings by at least $200 over the last year. So it's a really great resources for folks who are looking for a little bit of directed guidance on how to get that financial planning started. So I'll hand it back to Andrea.
That is excellent. I think combined with the VyStar information and what's available through Sage, I think we've got a really good foundation of resources. I'm going to date myself a little bit. I don't know if anybody remembers the old Fabergé shampoo commercial, and they say, I'm going to tell two friends, they tell two friends, and so on and so on and so on. This information, I'm highly encouraging you to save it, share it. So that's really, really, I think, beneficial when we talked about trusted sources, and I think friends are our trusted source. So it's, again, these connections through this information that we're sharing today certainly can be shared. Let me jump into a slide or two about Elder Source and a resource that we have available for you. Next slide. Our mission here at Elder Source is to empower people to live and age with independence and dignity in their homes and in their communities. We are an aging and disability resource center here in Northeast Florida. And next slide. This is the area that we cover. We have sister agencies, other area agencies on aging in Florida. There's 10 others, but if across the country, there are over 630 area agencies on aging. So you have a family member or friend that lives somewhere outside of Florida, looking at an area agency on aging for resources is certainly a great place to start for help. Next slide. So just quickly, we are a nonprofit organization and we're funded through state and federal dollars, the Older Americans Act, and through grants and donations. And this particular program has been funded by the LGBTQ Fund for Northeast Florida. So we are able to put on these programs and offer these resources in addition to the money that we get through the state and federal government. Next slide. I want to share with you that how you connect with us initially for any information is through our helpline. It's our tagline is "Start Here for Help," and everything starts with the helpline. We receive over 6,000 calls a month of people calling for all different kinds of reasons for in-home services, housing, and food. And specifically, our staff is trained to understand and assist those in the LGBT community to connect to those resources that not only that we might offer, but also are offered in the community. So the helpline is the place to start. Next slide. One of the things that was discussed earlier was about Medicare benefits. We have a program called SHINE, Serving Health Insurance Needs of Elders. It's free and unbiased counseling on your Medicare benefits. And right now it's open enrollment, and people are certainly barraged with, direct mail pieces, television ads, even the sometimes those unwelcome phone calls that you get at the dinner hour. But we have an amazing staff of volunteers. They're actually volunteers, and they're not staff. There's about 40 volunteers that help you understand how to make your choices for your Medicare benefits. As I mentioned, it's free and unbiased, but they're background checked, and they are not permitted to have an insurance license. So everything that is brought to the table and discussed with them is something that they are trained and have an ear and an eye to understand how to make all the choices, help you make the good choices for your Medicare benefits. So while open enrollment is busy right now between the 7th of October, I should say it's October 15th through December 7th, we have the ability to sit with you or over the phone to make the choices now. But there's 10,000 people turning 65 every day. So they are often in that decision mode of, how do I understand and navigate through my Medicare choices? Well, Shine is certainly that program that will do that. Next slide. So other important things to know about Shine, that it's the only Medicare sponsored source of one-on-one counseling in the state of Florida. Our Shine volunteers, as I mentioned, they're highly trained, they're background checked, and they don't attempt to sell you any insurance. And again, it's free and unbiased. Something that's happening right now at a rampant pace, a super incredible pace, is Medicare fraud. There's a group of volunteers in that Shine team that knows specifically how to detect, report healthcare fraud and those errors and abuse. So if you feel like you've gotten a Medicare bill, or you're being approached by making a choice that you're not quite sure about, as you may just unsure about who's approaching you, by all means, please call Elder Source, our helpline, and ask for a Shine consult. So it is a busy time right now for open enrollment, but that doesn't mean that you have to go it alone. So connect to Elder Source Shine program. Next slide. So we're now here at the time for question and answer. So if you haven't put anything in the chat or the Q&A, please do. We do have some questions that we want to pose to our experts. And while they're kind of getting ready for that, I do want to make mention, I received an article the other day. It appeared in the Washington Post on October 23rd. And I will put this particular article and a link to it in the resource link after the session. But the headline reads, "The anxieties of growing old with your LGBTQ." So again, this is the focus and the point of doing these workshops. There is a different set of anxieties and challenges when you're an older adult living in the gay community. So we want to make sure that we have these resources for you to make the best choices as possible and for you to age well. It was just an excellent article, and it was just so, I thought, on point and particularly timely as we go forward in this, this arena of our workshop. So, excuse me, I'm going to get some of the questions up. Jennifer, Stephanie, Elise, why don't we take our microphones off, and I'm going to keep an eye on our question session. Let me find my questions that did pop up. Okay. So let's start with the first one. And there's quite a few, so I'm not sure how we'll get through all of them, but we will do our best. But anybody can jump in. It's just time for a good conversation with all of us. So I like this one. What are some considerations to make when starting SSI? Your Social Security. Who wants to tackle that one?
I can. So you want to think about what your other income coming in will be, what your expenses are, what your spouse's income will be, and what happens if one of you passes away. That's a big decision. You might want maybe the unhealthier person to pull earlier and the healthier person to delay, and vice versa. So there's a lot of factors. And again, meeting with one of us or your local Social Security office is a good place to start.
Jen, do you have anything to add?
I think bottom line, everything we do from a financial planning perspective is going to be focused around the individual and their personal situation. So kind of high level what Steph said, again, take a moment, speak with a financial professional, and we can, through a conversation, maybe identify some additional challenges or opportunities for your situation.
That's great. I think there, in a couple of other workshops, it was pointed out very poignantly that a lot of LGBTQ adults don't necessarily have children, that they look to not necessarily their family of origin or the children to be in a caregiving role. So I want to talk about the long-term care. What options are available for long-term care? And as you are making those choices, how do you build the circle of trust around you and the circle of support around you? So Elise, I don't know if you've got some perspective on that.
Yeah, I mean, one of the great places to start, I think, is with SAGE has a collaboration with the Human Rights Council that is about trying to find those institutions of long-term care that have made a commitment to be LGBTQ plus affirming. And you can find that at our LEI, which is the Long-Term Care Equality Index. It's a good way to figure out who is providing the type of environment that is going to be really supportive and affirming. I think that that's one good place to start. But another place is, trying to figure out from other folks in the community who they go to, who their sources are for figuring out what long-term care is going to work for them and how are they going to be able to afford it and if they can.
And I would add, if you don't mind,
Please.
definitely work with SAGE and people in your community to figure out maybe the institution where you want to be for that healthcare, but then partner with a financial planner to understand how can you best fund it from the best tax efficient way from the finances that you have and the wealth that you've accumulated.
Absolutely. By calling Elder Source as well, that we can lead you to some of those individuals and organizations that will help you identify a particular long-term care facility that might meet your needs. But again, partnering with the people that you trust, a financial advisor, your attorney, and your partner, or again, just people who have walked the walk. I want to talk a little bit about caregiving. I'm hearing so much and out in the community and the presentations that I make that, caregiving is hard enough as a challenge as it is. And so when you have to make financial decisions, looking at those people who are in your circle of trust to help you and guide you, not only, of course, in the financial aspect, but I want to talk a little bit about, let me look at the one question. So it goes to, what are some of your common concerns about retirement? So, and I think the caregiving aspect, that was one slide on there, but there's other aspects of retirement to consider. Can you review those again, Jen and Stephanie, about that?
I'll start with a couple. I think some key risks in retirement are what's the market doing? How will our investments be behaving? Where is the economy as far as inflation? How efficient are our investments working for us? What type of healthcare issues do we have? And then how are we going to fund those? Would you like to add anything, Steph?
Yeah, so long-term care is what really throws a lot of people's plan off. If you don't have a plan in place, you have to start funding that with your own assets. A lot of people, your main chunk of your money is in retirement assets. So if you're pulling from there, $100,000 extra a year that you weren't expecting, that's huge. It's a huge tax hit. It's a huge financial hit to your family's assets, to your spouse's assets if you want to pass them on. Or if you don't have children, maybe you want to donate these funds to an organization, right? You don't just want to blow them on long-term care. So there are products out there, they've changed over the years, so I'd say they've improved. It's not like health insurance where you're paying a monthly premium and you may or may not use it, right? There are investment vehicles for long-term care, and they are same-sex eligible. So if you and your spouse had, say $50,000, you could put it into a policy geared towards long-term care. And if you don't use it, someone's going to inherit it, which is nice. That has come a long way, but if you don't plan for it, you got to pay for it somehow. And long-term care can be in your house. It doesn't mean you have to go away somewhere. I'm sure Elise could touch on that, sometimes you might just need someone to come into your house once or twice a day. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to go into a facility. So a lot of people don't want to think about it or deal with it until they've gone through it with a loved one, and then they realize, I need to plan for it as well.
And I think a big takeaway is we wait until we get into retirement or until we're retired to think about these things. One, planning can never start too early. And like we heard earlier, this information, save and share it. Most importantly, implement it. Even if you take one piece of this presentation away today and implement it in your life, you're going to set yourself up to be in a better financial situation. Even if it comes to the basics of having your income and expenses and like a budget in place and then growing from there.
Elise, did you have anything you wanted to add?
No, I think all of that is true, especially in these, long-term care. We always think institutions be the case, can be someone or multiple someones who come to the home for as long as that's something that's feasible. And trying to find again those folks who are going to be affirming and who are going to be supportive to the LGBTQ plus experience and those identities is really the biggest part, because when we think about folks coming into the home space, right, it's a very sacred, it's a very special place, and so we don't want anyone coming in who might not necessarily be affirming. So making sure to be able to find those resources, for example, through Sage, where you can get folks who will be welcoming and affirming.
And I think it's also important to have the right legal documents in place. Just because we have a partner or someone in our lives that we feel would, kind of follow our guidelines of how we want to be cared for in our home or our healthcare handled, if they're not if there isn't a legal document in place, and if they're not related to you, they may not be able to act on your behalf when you need them to.
And maybe Elise, you can talk about sometimes the those documents or the laws are different state by state. So can you just emphasize something a little bit about that?
I was actually going to ask a question about that and answer a question, but I wanted to learn more about where one can go to find out what are those state specific laws and policies. I think I don't even know necessarily what's different in Illinois versus what's different in Florida in terms of what one needs in place to make sure that they're protected given those state specific policies. So I was going to ask the folks from VyStar if they could answer that.
Again, I would say that's where the benefit of working with a certified financial planner comes into place, because we can guide you to the right experts that you need to bring into your financial picture to complete your puzzle, whether it's an attorney. VyStar, we have something that we offer that's around wills and estates and some trust planning, if that's a need for you. So again, it's going to go back to your specific situation, the state that you're in, but the foundation is to have a plan where you can choose your investments that can be managed throughout your lifetime. And through that plan or that initial conversation is where that financial planner will have access to other resources you may not think that would be beneficial to you. But for doing this, over a decade, we've had those thousands of experiences throughout our lifetime where we've helped people through. So again, don't worry about what you don't know. Schedule a time, have a consultation. It's just a conversation, and we can guide you down to making sure you have that complete puzzle or plan in place.
Yeah.
Great. We've got several. Oh, go ahead.
No, I have a different question. So if you
Go right ahead.
I was wondering where people can go to find out about, sometimes folks want to do investing in companies and in different mutual funds that are more aligned with their values and ethics, and not just, who's making the most profit. And I was wondering if you had any guidance as to where we can find, kind of this like more, I guess what's called socially responsible investing. Like, where can people go to find those?
So I would say kind of two sources, and I'll let Steph get the next question, but I would say kind of two sources to start with. One, if you like doing your own research and figuring that out on your own, you're going to go to kind of an independent broker dealer that has great online research tools. You'll probably figure that out for yourself. If you have those desires of how you want your money to work for you, again, when you meet with a certified financial planner, you're going to tell us if that's part of what's important to you. And then we're going to recommend or propose that in our solution, because what we're going to propose to you has to be in line with your goals, your time frame, your risk tolerances, your preferences. So by you telling us that, we're going to give you that in our proposal. So you don't have to worry about where to find the investment. You just have to know what you want. Share that with us, and then it's our job to deliver as a fiduciary on what's best for you.
That's helpful.
And there are portfolios out there that are socially responsible, or sometimes biblically responsible. There's lots of investments these days that cater to what people want to know where their money's going. So definitely options out there.
Great. So we've got a variety of questions here. I'm just going to kind of jump around. I don't think they're in any particular order. What do I do if my work doesn't have a 401k? So it sounds like a savings question.
Yeah, so that's where you want to come talk to a professional, whether it's us or your CPA is a good start to figure out if you need a traditional IRA or a Roth IRA, how much we should be putting in, the maximum amounts every year. To get started. So I just actually helped a girl this last week. She's starting off with $5,000. She's a travel nurse, so she doesn't have a retirement account, and she's going to add $500 a month. And I showed her an example. At 25 years old, she'll have over $3 million when she retires. So that's huge, you know. And we love helping people like that because you're really changing their life.
And that's the benefit of, that's the benefit of starting early too. She's 25.
I was just going to
say no
say
expenses as a travel nurse. So that's why, again, you can never start too early.
Right. That was one of the questions. When should I start? So it's never too early. Does it cost anything to meet with a financial advisor? How does that work?
It depends on the company that you partner with. At VyStar, it's complimentary, and at lots of other financial institutions. So again, I would encourage you, interview 2 or 3, get a feel for who you connect with and go from there. If they're going to charge you a fee up front, I would say look to other options first, because there are options where having that conversation and getting that plan is complimentary. So why spend $5,000 if you don't need to?
Yes. And a related question, it says, how much do your investments cost to buy?
Again, it depends. We have investments that are no fees up to, it could potentially be a fee to have money or assets managed. So again, we're fully transparent. When you meet with us and we provide that solution, you will also have an understanding of not only the investments, the allocation, but the fees. It's transparent.
This is a good question, and I would think it probably goes back to some of the information that you shared earlier, depending on the environment. It says how much, and of course how old you are, how much does it cost, how much does a person need to retire today? So I mean, if you can do a scenario of somebody who's 30, and for myself, I'm 60. So I would think that those numbers are different.
To kind of sustain the quality of lifestyle that you want in retirement, an average is you should be putting away a minimum of 15% of your salary. But again, how much do I need in retirement? That's going to come back to, what do you want to do? Do you want to travel the world? Do we want to spend first class at the Ritz-Carlton? Or do we want to just, be in a tent on the beach that's oceanfront? Different costs. So again, it all goes back to the individual personal situation, and then kind of planning for how do we see our style of life in retirement.
Another question similar. How much can I withdraw from my 401k plan to make it last?
Again, that's going to come back to how much have you saved? When do you start withdrawing? As far as when we're of an age that the IRS mandates or requires us to take out a certain amount, that first year it's going to average usually around 4%.
Elise, do you have any questions that you want to pose? Have you got anything in specific? There's a couple more that we can go to before we close out today.
Yeah, I was wondering, a lot of folks in the LGBTQ plus community don't necessarily have spouses or partners. And I was wondering if there are any differences in, retirement account benefits when it comes to what, spouses are able to do and what non-spousal beneficiaries are able to do.
Absolutely. Oftentimes in a 401k, if you're married, the spouse is automatically your beneficiary. If you're not married, then it's your job or your responsibility to make sure that you set up or establish a beneficiary on that account. If you don't do that, then your assets go through probate court and the court decides who inherits what, and that's expensive. So again, it comes back to foundations of financial planning. When you work with a certified financial planner, we're going to look at your savings. That's going to be our first bucket. Do we have 3 to 6 months of an emergency fund in place? And then we're going to just build upon that. We're going to look at the investments that you have. We're going to talk to you. Do you have beneficiaries set up on that account? If it's a beneficiary type of an account where that's an option, and kind of go through that planning process. But that's, again, why it's so important to really meet with a professional that can guide you through certain accounts and certain basics that you can have in play or in place to ensure that what you've worked hard for is distributed to the person and the people that you love the most, or the organizations that you want to continue helping. Anything to add to that, Steph?
No, that was pretty good. And I thought that it was pretty neat that same-sex couples are able to claim Social Security benefits off of each other and are still entitled to the same federal benefits as everyone else, regardless of your state. And I did learn that that you have to be married for 10 years, right, to claim spousal benefits. But let's say that because of state laws that you weren't able to have been married for 10 years, that they would still look at that and they could backdate it regardless. So it's definitely something where if you get, I always tell people, if you don't like the answer, keep asking. So they might say, oh, you weren't married long enough, or the laws don't go back that far. Well, maybe they do and that person's wrong, and they might still be able to honor that. So there's a lot of good changes that have taken place recently that would impact the LGBTQ community.
And I think that's where it's important to reach out to SAGE or reach out to an attorney at that point, to really guide you through the legalese to ensure you're getting kind of what you're entitled to.
Great. I like this question because I think a lot of people have faced this choice. Do I invest or do I pay off my credit card?
Absolutely. Any high interest debt, we want to take care of that first. Bottom line. And then we're going to work on an emergency savings. And then we're going to talk about investments, because investing your money may not be the first place that you start. So again, it comes back to plan, invest, manage. Let's get a plan in place, make sure we have a hierarchy of savings. Once we have that emergency fund set up, 3 to 6 months of whatever our expenses are, then let's look at our investment options. Do we have a 401k? Do we have an IRA? Are we maxing it out? Do we have additional savings that we're then looking to grow for our future needs?
And if people have a lot of high interest debt and just need help controlling all of it and getting a plan in place, I do love the Dave Ramsey mindset. I don't like him for all of his ideas, but as far as debt payoff and the lifestyle ideas, I do love him. The debt snowball is a great option. You need to get that emergency fund in place, then really tackle the debt till it's manageable, maybe down to just your house as your last final bill, and then start hitting the retirement accounts. But we got to get everything else in place. Otherwise, you're just robbing Peter to pay Paul, and you're not going to feel in control of your situation. And a lot of times that's where we'll come into play to say, hey, let's get a plan. Let's get you back on track and know and check in with us every 6 months or once a year until we get to there. So,
and that's where the fundamentals or the foundation of a budget comes into place. Oftentimes we don't realize how much money that we spend on things we don't need that are more wants, where if we took some of that and put it towards our future goals down the road, you know, money doesn't buy us happiness, but it absolutely gives us options.
There was one thing you mentioned earlier, and I think a lot of people would benefit from hearing it again. It's, you know, some of these things, when you hear them, it's like, oh my gosh, I'm not doing them. I'm afraid to talk about it. But you had said there's certainly no fear or shame in coming in and asking the question. Knowledge is power. So we want you to have the knowledge, to have that power to make the choices for you to live and age well. So I can't thank you enough. Next slide, we've got a few extra resources that we want to share. And again, this is being recorded. So if you haven't had a chance to take notes, you can go back and listen to it again. It'll be uploaded to the My Elder Source website. There's contact information for both Stephanie and Jennifer, Elder Source's numbers on our website. And then the VyStar folks shared a couple of really great websites: the National LGBT Chamber of Commerce, Social Security Admin, and LGBTQ couples, and the Medicare and LGBT couples, another website for you to tap into those resources that are excellent, excellent, excellent. Next slide. I think we are at the end. I want to thank again the fund, LGBTQ Fund for the Community Fund for Northeast Florida. They've been very generous with supporting Elder Source and the programs that we have. And I want to say thank you again to our speakers. You're awesome.
Thank you for the partnership.
Yes, thank you. Elise, your Sage is a great partner with Elder Source. We appreciate you as well for joining us today. Thanks again, and please check out the websites and resources that we've shared for you. Have a great day.